All right, welcome into our YouTube only segment where we take your questions and answer them here on YouTube. While you're here, hit that subscribe button, get this clip and all clips from the show to your feed every single week. And Sergio, we're going to start with a question that you were touching on briefly on the podcast this week, and that is the Charlo brothers. Chris Rowe asking, what's next for both Charlo brothers? What do you think should be the right fights for both these guys?
Activity and cash out on that name that you already built for so long, because both Charlos have had their issues inside and outside the ring, and both Charlos, the twins, are 35 years old now. It's make or break now, and you're not going to make in your mid-30s. So now it's time to get the biggest possible fight that you possibly can, get the most money, and then, you just call it a career, because Charlos aren't going to beat anybody of any significance at 168. The best they could probably do is beat a top ranked contender, maybe get another title shot, and that's it. Sell off into the sunset with that name that you build. But too much inactivity has plagued their career, and believe me, I've been inactive in my career. It has no pity for you. It takes your career, and then later in life, when you're retired, you say, damn, why wasn't I active enough? Why wasn't I taking less money to stay busy? And those are the regrets every fighter has that's inactive.
Yeah, I don't think that either Charlo is looking to climb the rankings or get a world title shot. They're just looking for some money fights as they're coming down the stretch. I think for Jermell Charlo, this sort of fight he's flirted with Errol Spence Jr. is kind of interesting. They're both high-profile guys, former stablemates under Derek James, so there's some bad blood there. We've seen Jermell post the lion with the fish in his mouth on Instagram. He's trying to drum up interest in that fight. I just don't know yet if Errol Spence has the appetite to come back. He just doesn't seem all that motivated to get back into the ring. I know there are a lot of people kind of keeping their eye on Errol Spence. Virgil Ortiz is someone keeping his eye on Errol Spence. But if Errol and Charlo want to come back, you could do a lot worse than seeing them come back against each other. And for Jermall, the Caleb Plant fight is something that still has some juice behind it, because we all saw the slap scene around the world in Vegas when Caleb slapped Jermall. Apparently they buried the hatchet a little bit since then, but there's still some spice to that matchup. Neither one of these guys is at a championship level right now, but they're both at 168. That's a main event on a PBC platform that you could do anywhere in the U.S. I'd like to see that fight for both these guys at 168 pounds. Notorious Devin, he asks, should Crawford stay at 168? If he does, what fights would you like to see him involved in? Shout out, by the way, to Devin, who was the guy that hooked us up over at Cosm in Los Angeles. We like that place, Cosm. It's a good spot. What do you think of Crawford fighting at 168? Who should he go up against?
Is that who set us up behind a big pillar where we couldn't see the game?
I knew you were going to
Thanks a lot, Devin.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah. Everything else was great. Everything else was great. But how about you put us where we actually see that beautiful screen next time? But I won't hold it against you. What was the question again?
The question was, should Crawford stay at 168?
No, he shouldn't. No, he shouldn't.
Then what do you want to see Crawford do?
Crawford should probably, go back down to 154, 160. Stay busy in those fights. I know he's accustomed to that big money. He made $50 million in his last fight. He's not going to make even half of that in his next fight if he doesn't fight Canelo or someone like that. And I don't see Crawford biting off more he can chew again. We know that he handled it against a 35-year-old fighter with a lot of wear and tear in Canelo, but I don't think he's going to be able to handle it against a David Benavidez at 168 or 175 or whatever, or anyone else of that magnitude. So even if he goes down to 160, right, and there's a champion, Aleem Khanouli, who's unheard of, but he's beatable.
Yeah, but you keep talking about Lara. You like the Lara fight, which I don't really get. Like, Lara's been
I was going to go there too,
too,
but I was going to go there, transition to there. But he's beatable, and he's a unified champion, but no one knows him. At this stage of Crawford's career, I think the name is more than the title. So he should go for Erislandy Lara. He has a name and a title, and I think that makes total sense to win another championship in another division and become a 5-division champion. That's incredible.
I think that question is going to be better able to be answered after November 15th, after Chris Eubank Jr. fights Conor Benn. Because if Eubank Jr. beats Conor Benn, he becomes a natural opponent for Terence Crawford. Got a name, has proven he can sell tickets in the UK, great at a press conference, dominates press conference better than he dominates fights. If he can beat Conor Benn in this rematch, then all of a sudden a Eubank Jr. versus Crawford fight becomes a really marketable one. And as we talked about on the pod, it kind of is a full circle moment for Terence Crawford. He won his first title over in the UK against Ricky Burns. Now, 10 some odd years later, he can come back to the UK, defend his undisputed championship against Chris Eubank Jr. Profile, money, significant fight. That's the fight I want to see for Terence Crawford. All right, Joe asks, should Inoue get more pound-for-pound credit for fighting 4 times this year compared to Usyk and Bud only fighting once? Is fighting 4 B-level fighters more impressive than fighting 1 A-level fighter?
Joe, just like Chris Mannix has probably heard a lot, size matters. And size matters when it comes to boxing. You know, the magnitude of the heavyweights are always going to overshadow the little guys at 118, the little giants, I like to call them, at 118 or 122 or 126. It's the heavyweight championship of the world. Everyone in the world knows what that prestigious title means, and I think they're always gonna come over the little giants. And I'm sorry to say that because I'm a big fan of Bam Rodriguez. I'm a big fan of Monster Inoue and what he's doing in Japan, conquering, champion after champion. But ultimately, one fight in the biggest stage possible for the biggest prize in boxing overshadows, 3 or 4 fights in the smaller divisions.
Well, it's going to be the question and look, it's pound for pound is a different debate than fighter of the year. I think Terence Crawford and Alexander Usyk are 1 and 1A in pound for pound because of the guys that they're beating. Terence Crawford jumping up 2 weight classes to beat the best at 168. It's a huge accomplishment. Inoue knocking out Daniel Dubois in a better way, or not in a way, Usyk knocking out Dubois in a better way than he did the first time around. That's a major accomplishment. I think those 2 guys are right there at the top with Inoue coming in that number 3 spot. The question, though, of fighter of the year, I think is a little bit more interesting because, look, it was a huge win for Terence Crawford. Is it more significant than the 3 wins over kind of B-level guys? And I put MJ Akhmadaliev was not a B-level guy going into that fight. MJ Akhmadaliev was like a B+, A- level guy going into that fight. And Inoue made him look stupid. And Inoue is going to fight David Allen Picasso. He is going to mow down David Allen Picasso. That is not going to be a pretty fight at all. But the Akhmadaliev dominance was impressive. I kind of lean towards you. I'm a voter in the fighter of the year for BWAA and for Sports Illustrated. Of course, I am the only vote that matters for Sports Illustrated. But I lean now more towards Crawford doing what he did because that was such a significant accomplishment on such a big stage.
It's something that's always going to be debated and overshadowed. But yeah, I think you're right. Because the big names matter. The big popular fights matter. Who gathered more attention and turned more non-boxing fans to tune into a big fight internationally? That's the word here, internationally, because Inoue, even though they try to bring him over here and cause big things, he didn't stir up or generated the attention that a Crawford or even a Usyk or even a Fury, who weren't Americans, did out here. So because Inoue is not turning the heads internationally, like Crawford did in this last fight against Canelo, you have to give it to Terence Crawford just with that one huge win and a huge moment on the biggest stage in the capital city of boxing too, in Las Vegas. I just think all that matters whenever you take it into effect and have to cast your vote.
All right, last one. D asks a question. This is for you, and I'm actually interested what your answer is going to be to this because it's something I don't think people know enough about. D wants you to talk about your experience with fighters' wages and deductions. Let's say a fighter gets $1 million purse. How much does he spend on training camps, staff, which includes coaches, cutman, nutritionist, manager fees, lawyer fees, tax man? How much does a fighter end up with after that purse is given to them?
D, that's a great question. And I value all my fans and their questions, but it's none of your business.
Come on. You got to do better than that.
All right, I'll give you a little bit of it. All right, so look, back in the day, manager used to take 30%. That's lunacy nowadays because fighters are making a lot more money. So you got to agree with your manager. I'm not going to give you a third of my check or whatever it is. So we're going to come down to say 12%. And then once I start generating 7 figures, that has to drop down to 5 figures. So you need to have a non-contract agreement whenever it comes to your manager. Then when it comes to your trainer, that's usually a 10% that you have to pay your trainer. But once you start making Manny Pacquiao money and Canelo money, that 10% goes down because it has to come down. You're not going to pay your trainer $10 million out of a $100 million check for not taking no punches, even though he has bled with you since you were a kid. But come on, man, that's just business. So 10% for the trainer, 30% for the manager can get brought down the more money you make. Now, when it comes to cut man, great question. That you have to have a side deal because cut men aren't just working for you in the corner. They can go to an event and they can work all the undercards and then go into the main event slot. So he's getting paid not only from you, from everyone else, but he's doing it on your name. So cut man is another thing. Nutritionists and strength trainers, all this can be a side deal. So those don't have percentages. But I just think the ones that are notched in boxing, in business, is the manager, 1/3, the trainer, 1/10, and then everyone else. But all that can be not manipulated, not negotiated before that fight. But make sure you do it before the fight because a lot of fighter trainers and managers go into the legal disputes and they break up over money. And we've seen a lot of them. Gennady Golovkin was one of them, probably with Abel Sanchez. Once he made that $100 million, he didn't want to pay Abel Sanchez that $10 million, and I understand it. But before that deal was made, they should have said, Abel, I'm not going to give you 10. I'm not going to give you 1, but I will give you $4 million. Let's meet there. And I think they would have avoided a lot of turmoil. But that happens to a lot of relationships.
It's interesting because what you're kind of describing is 40 to 50% of your purse going to some other people.
All the time. Yeah. And you're not even talking about Uncle Sam, who's going to come knocking at your door,
so
too.
Give an example then. Like, what was the biggest payday of your pro career?
It was 7 figures, Chris Mannix, but it was in the low 7 figures.
Okay.
It was in the low 7
More
figures.
More than $2 million?
It was in the low 7 figures. And my trainer and I butted heads over that low 7 figures because I changed his 10%. And, it burned him a little bit, but I had to explain that I wasn't just paying him. I was paying my coach, who's been paying for both of us for all this time, even though coach doesn't know nothing about boxing and he wasn't the boxing brain, but I still had to pay him for his loyalty. I still had to pay him for his hard work. I still had to pay him for those morning sessions that he would take me to the mountains to go run. So I had to pay him for his loyalty. And Dean, who was a boxing brain, had to get cut from his percentage to give to the coach because that's just, we got to take care of each other. But yeah, it rubs people the wrong way once you start messing with their money.
Latin Snake LLC got paid off that.
The Latin Snake Promotion. That's an S Corp. Right. An S Corp is something that you got to talk to. Boxers need to talk to their financial advisors about an S Corp because you could write off a lot of things.
Just who I want to trust my money with. Sergio Mora.